Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the World of Sports podcast. We're finally bringing back some hockey content here. I'm very excited. Couldn't get Max and Malik on. Got to do that sometime, but a lot of moving parts. We're all really busy. So, anyways, we're gonna be just recapping the NHL offseason because I haven't really been on that, and a lot of stuff happened, including with my Hurricanes, which was very exciting. And there's a lot of other stuff that went on, so I'd love to discuss that. And then also, I'm going to be making a video about MLB trade deadline. I'm also coming out with an article in the future, winners and losers of the MLB trade deadline, which will be on Fansided, which you guys can see. Put that link in my bio. And I also have a big announcement coming, so I'll do that on Twitter. Yeah, that's that. So let's get right to it. Let's start out with the big headlines of free agency, which I really want to discuss. Selfishly, I'm going to start with my team, Carolina Hurricanes, what we did. It was a huge offseason for them. A lot of UFAs, a lot of roster movements that were needed to be made. And it was interesting. Like always, they kind of are creative and find ways to improve the roster that you don't really see coming. But it wasn't all that much of a glory. I'm really sad we lost. The Canes lost Nino Niederreiter. They traded Tony DeAngelo, which I was happy about. They lost Vincent Trocheck to the Rangers. Niederreiter signed with the Predators. Martin H's, I'm not sure what his deal is. And then they lost somebody else. Oh, they lost Brendan Smith. But they brought in some guys. The Hurricanes acquired Max Pacioretty, I think for like a player to be named later or cash considerations or something. Like, it's kind of weird that Vegas just kind of handed the Hurricanes Pacioretty because he's still a pretty good goal scorer, like still a pretty decent player. And then the Hurricanes also took on Brent Burns. The Sharks absorbed 33% of that contract, so I think he's getting paid around like $6.5 million to $7 million. The Canes are paying him that, so still maybe a little bit of an overpay for Burns, but he's going to be on a team that's winning and can obviously make the playoffs, so maybe his change of play will turn around. I mean, you're just playing for absolutely nothing on San Jose, so I think it's going to be he's going to be trying a little bit more invested. At least that's what I'm hoping for. That's how I'm trying to sell it to you guys. But it's obviously awesome to get a guy like Burns on your team, with his career and everything he's done. Awesome player. Obviously, like I said, he is a little washed. They also signed Andre Kasha, who was just a depth forward. They signed Ryan Dzingel, brought him back. So a lot of roster moves. They also re-signed Ethan Bear. They still need another defenseman, I think, and I guess we're rolling with the same goalie situation with Frederick Anderson and Ronta, so that'll be interesting. But anyways, I want to move on to some other stuff that surprised me. So Claude Giroux's going to Ottawa. I thought that was interesting. The Senators still kind of, I don't really know where they are. Roster-wise, they're obviously not good enough to contend. Still probably at the bottom of they're not in the Metro, the Eastern, I guess. So I thought that was interesting. I think they buy out Murray or something. They lost Chris Tierney too, who's the main piece of that Carlson trade. So I thought that was interesting. I guess Drew kind of took that deal because he got a lot of money. I think one of the things and this is really harsh, that I realized is Philly does not have a great roster. I looked at their team kind of, after they got DeAngelo from the Canes, and they really have a poor roster. They need more scoring. They're old. They don't have a lot of young guys. I can kind of see why they made that Giroux trade. They need a new roster, and they kind of need to rebuild, honestly. That's kind of just a side note. Malkin re-signs with the Penguins, so great to see him. I think it'd be weird if he didn't play for the Penguins, honestly. So I'm happy he re-signed with them. And obviously that's great for the Penguins, getting one of their best forwards back. The Oilers, I loved what they did, signing Jack Campbell, finally getting some elite goaltending, which I was really happy about. So McDavid and Draisaitl won't be haunted by Mike Smith anymore, who was sufficient, according to many people, for playoff goaltending. Not. So I'm happy they got Jack Campbell, use that cap to get an elite goaltender, 5-year contract for him. And then they re-signed Evander Kane for 4 years. So, happy for him that he kind of revived his career with the Oilers and really made an impact in that playoffs. Moving on to the Panthers, they had a very interesting trade. Absolutely crazy. Panthers traded Jonathan Huberdeau, Mackenzie Weegar, a first-round pick, and I think that was it for Matthew Tkachuk. Tkachuk had 100 points last year, so definitely took a jump. He's a young player, and upon the trade, he agreed to an 8-year deal with the Panthers. So the Panthers locked him up. I think the most important thing to point out in this trade is the fact that Huberdeau and Weegar are both UFAs next year. So automatically, I feel like that means Florida would have lost one of those guys, kind of, no matter what. I don't like them trading away Huberdeau. I think he's just an awesome player. He's so consistent. Like, he's 100 points every season. Such a good goal scorer and forward. Just an awesome player. I love Jonathan Huberdeau. So, I guess they thought he wasn't going to re-sign. And I don't know. It's really, really an intriguing trade. But I think a lot of people were like, well, they gave up Huberdeau and Weegar, like, for Matthew Tkachuk. I mean, Huberdeau is better than Tkachuk, which I think is true. And they gave Weegar too, and a first-round pick, so they just lost this trade. It was terrible. I see it from that logic, but you have to remember that Huberdeau's probably, Calgary's probably not going to re-sign one of those two guys. The first-round pick is a bit of a head-scratcher for me. Like, I feel like they could have gotten that deal done if it was a second or third. I guess not, but are you really, if you're Florida, going to be like, all right, you're not going to do this deal unless we give you a first-round pick? Like, that kind of hurts, especially how meaningful the draft is in the NHL. It's just a great way to build your roster, and coughing up a first-round pick like that is tough. But also, you have to see it from another side of Florida, which is we've made it to the playoffs. I think it's 3 years in a row, maybe, and Huberdeau's been one of the main leaders and players on that team, and we haven't been able to make it out of the first round. That's I saw that, and I kind of thought of that myself, and like, that's a pretty fair argument. Like, Florida has not been able to make it out of the first round, and Huberdeau's great in the regular season. He's still pretty good in the playoffs, but like, maybe you need to change it up. Bring in a guy like Tkachuk who can score, puts up a ton of points, and is also really physical. I'm also not a huge fan of Weegar, so that's that. But, at least Florida gets a really good forward locked up for a bunch of years moving forward. I thought the return could have been better. I thought they gave up way too much. But that's just me, and a really interesting trade. You don't really often see two 100-point guys get traded for one another that often, so that was really interesting. In terms of other free agent signings, definitely want to talk about Detroit because I thought they did an awesome job this offseason. Andrew Kopp deal was definitely the best deal of this offseason. They got former Rangers center and Winnipeg center Andrew Kopp from in free agency. I think it was a 6 or 5 year deal for around $5.5 million average value, which is awesome for Kopp. He was an absolute stud in the playoffs for the Rangers. And you could argue he's a first line center, probably a low end first line center. So to get him at that price is spectacular. I know he also wanted to play for the Red Wings, which is awesome. They also added David Perron for a 2-year contract. He's an awesome forward. I love David Perron. Great scorer, puts up a ton of points. That's a tough loss for the Blues. Obviously, he's getting in the older side of his career, but you can't deny that Perron puts up points all the time, and he's just a great scorer. Last but not least, they got Ben Sherratt, and a lot of people criticize this deal. I am a huge Ben Sherratt fan. I think he's a great defenseman. Really high on him, but in the recent Athletic worst contracts, at Ben Sherratt's deal was on that list. It was 4 years. Let me find it real quick. It was like 4 years for, let's see here, 4 years, 19 million. So, it was 4.75 per year. So 4 years for 4.75 a year. I mean, that's a pretty decent contract. So I was a huge fan of that. And look, they're really improving their roster. They still need a goaltender, I think. That deal for the Canes kind of worked out with Nedeljkovic. They still kind of need a goaltender, but I guess they can kind of get by with Nedeljkovic. And then probably need another forward or two for scoring. They also re-signed Dominic Kubalik, which I liked a lot. But they're trending in the right direction. I feel like when you go from rebuilder to contender or trying to win, you kind of have to like make that push. And I think this was a great step because they added, if you look at it, I mean, they added Kopp, Perron, Sherratt. Those are 3 really good quality NHL players. They also got Tanner Pearson, right? Nope, Chase Pearson. Never mind. So that's a step in the right direction. And I think they still need a few more players to make the playoffs. But really like what they did. That Kopp contract is probably the best of free agency. Then, of course, I'm forgetting probably the biggest contract out of all, or the biggest shocker maybe of free agency, which is Johnny Gaudreau going to the Blue Jackets of all teams. And Eric Branson signing with the Blue Jackets. But first off, let's get to Gaudreau. So Gaudreau gets offered, I think, 7 or 8 years, maybe 6 to 8 years for $10 million with Calgary, and he declines that, which was really interesting because is Gaudreau worth $10 million a year? Like I don't think so. And he's like, no, I'm gonna test free agency. So then he is from New Jersey, may I add. He gets a huge deal from New Jersey. I don't know exactly how much it was approximately for annual average value, but it was more than what he signed with for CBJ. Then he gets a 7-year contract worth $9.75 million per year with the Blue Jackets, and he signs with Columbus. And I just think that is just so incredibly interesting. One, because Columbus never really breaks the bank on free agents. They signed Gaudreau, which is, I like Johnny Gaudreau. I don't think he's very effective in the playoffs, but you can't deny he's one of the best goal scorers in the league. Really good forward, etc. But he signs with Columbus, who is definitely worse than Calgary, probably worse than New Jersey, I'd say now. Yeah, they're worse than New Jersey, so that just makes no sense at all, and I know that's the general consensus. So that was just incredibly weird. And then, of course, Columbus is a smart organization. Let me also give them credit, their due credit. They signed Eric Gudbranson 4 years for $4 million. Eric Gudbranson, that is just, he had 17 points last year for the Flames. I know he's very big. I know he's physical. If you want a player like that, just sign Brendan Smith for $1 million per year. Like, don't give 4 years to Eric Gudbranson. This is a guy who's basically you could get for a nickel 2 years ago, and he hasn't changed. So I don't know what market you're competing for with that deal. Absolute head scratcher to me. Dallas Stars, they signed Mason Marchment to a 4-year deal, so that just hurt for Florida. Marchment's a great forward. I really like him, and that's going to hurt their depth for sure. Washington Capitals, my hometown team, they lost Ilya Samsonov, and they signed Stanley Cup winning goalie Darcy Kemper. I liked it a lot, honestly. I think Kemper, as you know, is a really good goalie, elite goaltender, really high on him. And, he was great on a really bad team for Arizona. Then he goes to Colorado. I say they finally got their elite goalie. They're going to win the Stanley Cup. They win the Stanley Cup. I predict that. And now he's going to Washington. 5-year deal, I think $5 million average around there. So I like that. And they finally got elite goaltending, which they're missing. In return, they lost Ilya Samsonov, who will now be the goalie for the Maple Leafs. Interesting duo for them. They're gonna have, I guess it's Mrazek and I could be wrong, Mrazek and Samsonov as their goalies. So I feel so bad for Leafs fans. Like, I don't even want to talk about it. Just really, really sad, I don't even have to go into it. Rangers, I want to cover. They signed, I believe they traded Georgiev, maybe. But they signed Vincent Trocheck, 7-year deal. Let's see what the average was. 7 years, I think it was like around $7 million. Financial terms were not disclosed. I think it was around like $7 or $6 million. 7 years for Trocheck is a lot. You also have to remember he's been injured a lot, has an injury history. So, I appreciate them building up center depth, but they pretty much, they lost Andrew Kopp, so he's just replacing Andrew Kopp, and he's not as good as Andrew Kopp. So, kind of sucks for the Rangers, to be honest. They re-signed Kakko to a nice deal, so I like that. And after that, I think that's just about it. The Blues signed Nick Leddy. I like that. He's a good defenseman. Oh yeah, another thing that the Blue Jackets. So the Blue Jackets were over the cap after re-signing re-signing Line, then paying Gabranson, paying Gabranson and Gaudreau. So they dumped Olivier Bjorkstrand with the Kraken. So I like that move by the Kraken, absorbing that contract and then probably dumping him at the deadline or something. And that's pretty much it. So big offseason. We're going to get more in-depth analysis moving forward with NHL. Probably going to do a season preview with Malik and Max. Got to do that, honestly. Because, yeah, that's that. But appreciate you guys listening, and yeah, looking forward to the season. And comment down below or on Twitter if you guys have any questions or want to talk hockey anytime. Appreciate it.